Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of thoughts. Mr. Lorenz, the corn ethanol industry in South Dakota has a huge amount of support within our population. And before I go on, I guess I'd like to submit to the record a letter of support for S517 from the South Dakota corn growers.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The corn ethanol industry in South Dakota employs literally tens of thousands of South Dakotans, and it really is a pillar of our state's economy. We have the capability of producing nearly 1 billion gallons of this product per year. As the market for ethanol increases, the market for corn will grow, and that means more jobs and increased revenue for corn farmers, many of whom work on their own family-owned farms. There is a byproduct, the dry distiller's grain and the wet distiller's grain, which I think you'll find in the upper Midwest we all recognize as being a very high-quality food product for livestock. We call it, in some cases, Dakota Gold, and we market it not only in South Dakota but to dairy farmers throughout the country. California even it brings it in. So it is a high-quality product, and the more ethanol we produce, the more of the byproducts we also have available as well. So it isn't necessarily a matter of losing food production to the production of alcohol. And I'm just curious, Mr. Lorenz, when you look at this particular legislation that's in front of us, where we go from 10 to 15, don't you think that what we're really doing is just taking out a whole lot of red tape so that we can sell basically the same or a very similar product throughout the year?
Absolutely. Like I've said before, we have the ability to sell this product for 8.5 months out of the year, and it's purely, in our view, a technicality and an antiquated regulation that doesn't allow us to sell it during the summertime. Between
E10 or 10% blend of an ethanol with gasoline versus a 15% blend, would there be a change in price? Would you expect a change in price?
We currently offer E15, so I just want to make it clear that at all the stores that we have E15, we also sell E10. So you have a choice, and this is what it's all about for us, is giving the consumer a choice. And so we typically sell that from 3 to 5 cents a gallon, currently 5 cents a gallon, less than 87. So it's not only more affordable, it's higher octane and cleaner burning.
I think that was
which appeals to the consumer.
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out. I think fair to say that most people, I think, would assume that if you have a higher octane fuel, you have a better fuel. Would that be fair to say is not only a belief, but perhaps found in fact?
That's the consumer and equates higher octane with better performance, which is true. And they also equate that with higher price. And the thing about E15 is it actually breaking down the consumer's paradigm on fuel on 2 levels, because you have a fuel that is not only cheaper, but also cleaner burning. And typically, a consumer would expect to pay more for a fuel that is higher octane and more environmentally friendly, and that's not the case with E15.
Ms. Yanowitz, I'm just curious, the last statement in your testimony, you say that, and I'll quote it, data indicates that replacing E10 with an E15 of the same vapor pressure will cause a slight decrease in emissions of ozone, forming organic compounds and carbon monoxide. Can you elaborate on that statement? And I'd just like you to answer one other question for me as well, and that is I'm really curious. I always thought ethanol, or that alcohol was alcohol, and by definition would have a similar formula. Can you share any thoughts? And I know that Mr. Teske had suggested the change in ethanol from a sugar cane-based versus a corn-based. Is there actually differences in terms of the chemical compounds between the two of them?
You're quite right. Ethanol is ethanol wherever it is, but in Brazil they use some hydrous ethanol that has water in it, and there could be differences in emissions, for example.
Okay. When we talk about the value, the ability to determine octane, and for this, Brooke, if you wouldn't mind, just I like a higher octane in my vehicles, and I try to buy. I buy E20 and E30. I've got a vehicle, a flex fuel vehicle that's set up to do that, and I'll buy E20 and E30 fuel blends. And part of what I like about it is the fact that I can get a higher octane rating, which I've always assumed was a better product, and it costs me less money as a consumer. I'm just curious, long-term, when we get to the CAFE standards coming in the year 2025, in that neighborhood, isn't it going to be a valuable item to be able to have a resource such as an alcohol product, regardless of where it's made, to be able to increase the actual octane ratings at a lower price than what it would be if we had a different type of a product, another chemical that we'd have to put into the existing petroleum products to bring that octane rating up? And aren't we really moving towards advanced fuels when we add an octane or something that feeds into that octane rating?
We are. So modern vehicles, and I think the autos have to decide, make their own decisions about which way they're going to go over the next not just 5 years, but 10, 20 years. But when you can tune a modern engine to take advantage of the higher octane in ethanol and create much greater efficiencies, as long as that octane is there and as long as it's clean enough to comply with the Clean Air Act, and the only solution in that lane is ethanol and alcohol. And so where we want to go is to give, as Mike said, consumers a choice at the pump, but imagine a scenario where the higher ethanol blends are actually cheaper, higher octane, and create efficiencies from an internal combustion engine that really get to where everybody wants to go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator